Hello everyone, and welcome back to another WARNO tier list. Today we're gonna cover APCs, and if you don't want to miss any of the future tier lists, and you want to see all of those when they come around, and you want to help the channel out, consider leaving a subscription down below. And also let me know down below, what is your favorite APC here out of the list? And do you think any are worth it compared to the truck? Because that is the main opponent of the APC when it comes to deciding if you choose them or not. The 20-point truck that is resellable. So that we put here as B tier units that we will put in B tier are around the truck's level. C and D tier are a bit worse, and A and S tier are units that you want to pick over the truck. And yeah, let's get into this here, as we're gonna start with the British, and we're gonna start with one of the units that got changed lately, as they have the FV432, which is a light armored personnel carrier, only one frontline armor. Pretty slow, as it is tracked. It only has a light MG, but it has smoke, and it only costs 15 points now. And that makes it cheaper than the truck. Though the truck is resellable, this is not. But yeah, MG and smoke for 15 points is pretty solid. It doesn't do anything fantastically, and it still is a reduction in speed, which is always an issue. But it's a bit better now, with the smoke really giving you some utility that is nice, and it only being 15 point, that is pretty good. Then we come to the next British vehicle, which is really interesting. That is the Spartan MCT. That is one of the few units here in the tier list that is an armored personnel carrier body, but it has an ATGM on top, and also can be used as a transport for ATGM teams. And this one has the best ATGM of the bunch here. It has a Milan 2. And all of that for 40 points. It was 35 points before, but all of that still is solid for 40 points. And especially with the smoke added on top of that, this is a really solid vehicle. I would put it into A tier. You get some extra ATGMs, you get some smokes. The bad stealth, bad optics means that you can't really use it for ambushes as easily as other ATGM vehicles, but it is a solid transport nonetheless. Then the next British vehicle is the Saxon. The Saxon being used, for example, to carry around your little friends from the SAS. Has smoke, costs 20 points. That's all on brand. Has a light MG. One frontal armor is not amazing, but it gets you around. And I would say the Saxon is an A tier unit, as the smoke really is helpful. It doesn't slow you down, and the extra MG can come in handy if the enemy has units that can't shoot back. It's not a great MG. The MG on the top of it is rather mediocre, but it does its job nonetheless. And it is still fast off-road. The Saracen, really similar, just a kind of older variant basically of it. The Saracen has the issue that it is a bit slower off-road, and I would put that into B tier for that reason, because you just, those extra last couple of meters, like it's a 90 to 65 kmh downfall. It still has smoke, it still has MG, but 65 kilometers off-road is really slow. What's the Saxon really on these last meters where you want to put your Saxons, your SAS off-road or into a forest or so, the Saxon still gets there really quickly. The Saracen gets there really slowly, and that's important seconds often in a game, especially in the start of a game. So the Saracen there, a bit weaker, still solid. Smoke has an MG, 20 points, good off-road speed, on-road speed. Makes the Saracen a solid unit. Next unit, AMX-13, 50 cal. That is an interesting unit as well. It has 3 frontal armor. It has a 50 cal on top. That is all pretty solid. It is decently fast off-road for a tracked vehicle, but nothing super special there. I would put it into B, as it is one of the best 50 cal carriers. It doesn't have smoke though, so that is one of its weaknesses here. But if you want a 50 cal that also can survive a couple of things hitting it, like a couple of autocannon rounds or so on, the MX-13 gets that done. Meanwhile, the next kind of units here are interesting. We have the VABs and the Fuchses going into Germany here afterwards. And the VABs are solid with their 50 cal. They have a really solid damage output with it. What they don't get is smoke. And that is a bit of an issue. I would still put them into high B tier here, as this lack of smoke on them means that the Saxon is on average still having that extra utility and is 5 points cheaper, but the 50 cal gives you good firepower support with which you can run around and extra range on it as well. So the VAB is a really solid fire support unit. VAB Milan does the same thing plus a Milan. It still doesn't have smoke, which for an ATGM vehicle is always annoying as well, but the 50 cal plus the ATGM gives you killing power against light vehicles plus killing power against infantry. That is a really solid combo. So yeah, that goes quite strong there. Transportpanzerfuchs as the next thing is pretty similar to what we have seen with the Saxon. Just a bit slower off-road. Has a light MG, has smoke, has all that you need in that regard. Goes into A tier here. And then the Transportpanzerfuchs Milan. That is a good tank hunter. Fast and has smoke. Can be repositioned nicely around. It is nowadays 40 points. It was back in the day 35 points, just like the VAB and the Spartan one. So all of these would have been S tier back then. By now, I would put it into A tier. It got removed because it was really strong from all the pioneers of the Germans, as they were really good with that, and you could really bring a lot of them and then just saturate the battlefield with Milan ATGMs, which was pretty powerful, but nowadays it's not that great. Then we come to the M113G of the Germans, and I would say that's the first C tier unit in the tier list. I'm still on the brink with this one. Actually, let's put this into C tier, high C tier as well. It's a 50 cal, but it is slow, and the slowness and no smoke is an issue. The M113-1G has smoke, but it's basically the same as the FV432, while it's costing 5 points more. And yeah, it has smoke, but it is slow. Only has a light MG, only has 1 armor, so it gets often one-shotted by anything that can shoot at it anyways. And that is an issue. So this one, not that amazing. Next unit is the M113 Milan, and that one doesn't have an MG, only has a Milan, and doesn't get smoke. So it gets a Milan. That Milan is nice, but it doesn't get smoke, even though it has smoke launchers on front, so it absolutely should get smoke. And it doesn't have an MG to help out with infantry, so it's a pure anti-tank unit that is slow, and all of that keeps it in C tier for me as well. As if it would get smoke, it would immediately go up to B tier. If it would get MG, it would be B tier. If it would be 5 points cheaper, it would be B tier. All of this, like any small buff here, would be going a long way. Smoke being the most realistic because it has the smoke launchers already modeled in front of it. But yeah, until then, M113-1G here in C tier. Now we come to the American ones. The American ones don't have smoke, but they have a 50 cal. And I would rate the 50 cal in those kind of units for only 20 points, a good bit higher. And I would put this one into B tier. The off-road speed is decent for the M113s. It does get the job done, gets in there, shoots at the enemy, and yeah, can get some damage in. The National Guard one is getting the National Guard debuff that is annoying for 50 cals, which already don't have the biggest base accuracy, and it halves their motion accuracy from 10 to 5% with the debuff and 25% reduction for the normal one, and still being the same price. That means it's a good bit worse than a normal M113 with 50 cal, and that keeps it in C tier here for me. Not a great unit with that, though you sometimes don't really have another option there if you want to have some fire support in the deck that gets it with 35th Infantry. So you might still bring it around. Not the most amazing M113 in my eyes though. The next one is the Dragon, and this one has a 50 cal and the 80 GM, so that makes it with the same price as the Milan. It doesn't have the smoke either, and it doesn't have any extra frontal armor or anything like that, but it gets an 80 GM. It's not a good 80 GM, it's just a Dragon, but it's still basically the 50 cal guy that also can shoot down other APCs quickly, can shoot down some side shot on an IFV if it gets into a good spot, and that for 25 points is okay. It's not amazing, but in some situation, the 113.83 Dragon can be nice. With the previous range of the Dragon, it was a really nice vehicle. Now it's okay. Not a unit that you're super looking forward to, but a unit that is okay to bring. Then we come to a unit that is not quite sure if you would should rate it as an APC, but I mean it has a bit of extra armor there with the Humvee, and yeah, it is coming as a transport for the military police in 35th, and it is really important for that deck because it's a National Guard deck. This guy has military police trait on it, and it can help out with all your National Guard tanks and so on, making it, even though it's seemingly pretty pricey, as it is just a fast guy with a MG, but the military police trait and being able to rotate that around quickly, giving it an A tier here, pretty important unit for the deck, and an interesting concept in general, the military police APC that can bring that trait around and also get your second military police unit out of one unit click, as you get the military police on foot that you can put next to infantry, and this one that you can put next to tanks. And then we come to the long list of BTRs in this list, as yeah, the Soviets alone have as many APCs options here as all of NATO, as APCs really the Soviet forte. And we start with the classic BTR-60, which comes with a 14.5mm and a 7mm gun, is fast on-road, not the greatest off-road, amphibious not that important, but in some niche scenarios can be helpful as well. So in general, a really solid B tier unit here. If you compare it to the VAB, it gets an extra MG, but it costs you 5 points extra, so it's not amazing, but you often bring it just as a solid fire support unit. And the German one a bit better, because as most East German units, it gets resolute on top of things, so that helps out, and that gets it a bit better. The German SPW 70 gets an extra frontal armor. That is really helpful, as it costs the same price, and that makes the SPW 70 a good bit better. Outside of that, it's identical, but it is just that one extra frontal armor. That gives it a decent bit more survivability. 1 to 2 is a big jump in the calculator, so that helps the SPW 70 of the Germans a good bit more. More of that category come around with the Commandantura. This one is even more expensive than the Command Humvee. Plus, it's in a deck where you don't need it, because 56 doesn't have a National Guard kind of problem of having so many units with the disheartened trait. So the BTR-70 Commandantura, I would say, is a C tier unit actually, because you pay a lot of extra price for like you pay 15 points extra, and in that deck you don't really need it. Like the extra stress recovery of the military police trait is nice, but you usually want to use it to get your disheartened units into action, and that doesn't really help with the BTR-70. Plus, you with a BTR you want to have it fighting, and this one you kind of don't want to, and that is a weird pull as well. More BTR-70 is coming around with the Rise. This one having the Rise launcher on top, and that is relatively low range though, so you have to push this thing into really risky scenarios. When you do, it does reward you decently for it, but in general, I would put this as a low B tier BTR as well. The S5 rocket one next. Same thing for this one. I would say this is not always that worth it because it has small rockets. It doesn't have as many of them, and it's pretty pricey for that as well. 50 points. That's starting to be IFV ratio. And yeah, you get the extra speed and you get those rockets, but with the S8, you have a one where the rockets actually do hurt a decent amount, and where you have 4 more rockets and decent bit more damage on them. And that really can grind you into an infantry position, and would put this one into 8 here. Though both are pretty similar, but usually you just, as you can choose the S8 and all units where you can choose the S5, just go for the S8. And yeah, be fine with that. The S8 is a solid little vehicle with the big 80mm rockets on top that can be used for sieging down buildings where the rockets true damage basically that just goes through armor. Helps out a lot. AGS variant. Even with the AGS buff, I would still hold here in B tier. It's really cool that you get all these guys, but yeah, B tier, here it is. And then we got the BTR-D, which gets 1 extra side armor, but it pays the extra price for it. And that keeps it here as well, as compared to the BTR-60s. Now it pays 5 points extra for the 1 frontal armor, which is the most important armor. It doesn't. For the side armor, now it does. Yeah, so this keeps the SPW-70 up there. BTR-70D with the extra armor with BTR-60. Just a B tier unit. BTR-80, on the other hand, costs the same price as the BTR-70D, but it gets smoke on top of this, and that puts it into A tier here. Let's put it here as you have the 2 armor, you have the fast transport, you have the good MG, you have better off-road speed as well, as it has a stronger engine, and you have the smoke launchers. So all of that makes it a really solid transport. 427th. 35 points are worth it there. And yep, you just go around and shoot things up with this thing. So BTR-80 here, the best of the BTRs, as it should be, just based on name. Because 80 bigger than 70 and 60. And then we come to the BTR-D robots, which are 35th little guys. And they come with smoke and a Conquerors. Conquerors, not quite as good as a Spartan, but as the Spartan with the Milan 2. As a missile, the Conqueror's a bit weaker, but still a good missile. Has a bit more range, but loses the 4 pen, so that's a trade-off that is not great for the robot, but okay. The extra range is nice, especially on a vehicle with bad stealth, where you don't want to push it into enemy ATGM range as freely, or into enemy gun range as freely. So the robot there helps out in the 35th scheme of just spamming ATGMs everywhere. For 35 points, it was really busted. For 40 points, it's still really good. So the BTR-D robot here, quite nice. It has 2 MGs. That is helpful as well. So you usually don't want to push it into the range of the PKTs. The BTR-D, the normal one, has an AGS on top. 30 points, has smoke, but 30 points is quite a lot to ask for slow transport. And the 2 MGs there, and with this configuration, you want to push it into the range. It still has the smoke. I would put it into C tier though. Like, usually the BTR-D is not something that you want to take. And it's not terrible, but yeah, it's just not something that you would want to take too often. And then we have the AGS, GTMU, which is another little AGS little transport. This one is way worse. It only has the AGS on top. It doesn't have the extra MGs. It doesn't have speed advantage. It doesn't have an armor advantage. And it doesn't have the MGs, no smoke. It's just a D tier unit here, I feel like, because it's a slow transport. It doesn't really get you anywhere. And once it's there, yeah, you have an AGS, sure, but that's not the most amazing weapon in the game. And paying 30 points for that feels pretty rough. If it would be 25 points, it would go into C tier. If it would be 20 points, it would be absolutely B tier, potentially A tier. 30 points, like, that's how narrow the margins are here. It's just unplayable. Like, not unplayable, but it's not a good pick in general. Next one, we can go with its brethren, the GTMU with the SPG-9. SPG-9 doesn't really fix the issue of no smoke, because you'd pay 10 points extra. If this would be 35 points, once more considering. But this is the same price as a Spartan, where the Spartan has smoke, has way longer range on its AP weapon, and also is faster off-road, and has an MG. And this thing has none of that, costs the same price. Like, really, the margins here are slim. But yeah, the GTMU there gets hurt. Ural with the rockets on top. That is an interesting unit as well. It has no armor though. It is just the truck with that little building, like the little turret on the rear that is slightly armored and so on, but the general truck kinda isn't. So yeah, the Ural Metla still only having the rockets, and it can be killed by everything. Like, the rockets are solid, but it's the small ones, just like with the S5. And I would put it into here as well. Like, you use them with the units that come with them quite often. So you often decide for the truck as well, just to get the cheap units. And yeah, they have the security trait that doesn't really help that much, as you don't want to use this. It has a decent amount of firepower there with this 40mm. It is decently fast on road, and it gets the rocket pod. Yes, that rocket pod is somewhat helpful, but it also often dies there, and then it's a 40-point unit, and that is somewhat critical. Like, you're gonna lose it, and it's just 40 points gone. And that's nearly an infantry squad, and the question is, will it get an infantry squad killed before that? Often not. And then, the other unit that got put to 15 points lately, with the MTLB. MTLB coming in as 1 armor, MG, 15 point, kind of shitbox. The OG shitbox, basically, the MTLB. And yeah, we put those still into C tier, as you often just want to have the extra speed on the units that get these guys, and you don't have smoke. Like, the extra utility of the FV432, you just don't get. So you often still opt for not picking these. Sometimes you do, that's why I would put them a high C tier, but often you just don't want to pick these guys. They are everywhere, so if you feel like you want to have that extra MG and a bit of annoyance where the enemy needs to find an AT weapon to kill it, go for it. You will find a spot where you can pick an MTLB in basically every pack division out there that currently is in the game. But yeah, outside of that, it's just okay. Same goes for the next transport. It has decent on-road speed, but pretty bad off-road speed. Like, only 50 km/h is pretty annoying for the SPW152. It had a big MG back in the day. Nowadays, it only has a light 7mm, and it has no smoke. It has no other utility. It's just decently fast transport that then has a 7mm on top. And you often just want to have the truck instead, because the 7mm doesn't do that much for you, and it's still 20 points. So you don't get that slight bit of extra that you get with the NPLBs or so in the opener, where you could just buy something else maybe out of the couple of 5 points that you get together out of it. And yeah, the off-road speed is an issue, and yeah, it doesn't really do much on the battlefield for 20 points. SPW PSH, that is a pretty helpful unit. It has security trait. On this one with 30 points and a bit of armor and so on, that can be helpful to actually spot stuff decently. And it has the extra MG, so it's basically a SPW 60 from its stats. Even faster off-road as well, which is really nice. Like, 85 kilometers off-road is a really solid speed. And the security trait plus the good MG and the extra small MG next to it, give it decent firepower, give it decent utility. Really solid unit here, SPW PSH. You should take when you can. And you can take it by now in a decent number of units, actually, with Berliner Gruppierung, Rügener, and 6. And then we come to the SPW 50PK, and its brethren, the Topaz. And both of these are basically the same as the MTLB, so they go here as well. There's nothing really special about them outside of, well, they have one extra frontline armor, so we put them ahead of the German one, with Resolute being ahead of its Polish brethren there, as the MG stats are the same and all the other stats are identical as well. So yeah, here we have it. I don't think any of the APCs currently are really S tier. There are a good couple of options that are worth taking though, and there are a good couple of ones where you can consider them over a truck, and that are the ones that you shouldn't consider over the truck. So yeah, let me know down below, where do you think I might be wrong, which one might be actually absolutely amazing, and which one I mistreated. And yeah, hope to see you in the next one, guys. Bye bye, and have a great day.